It was the mid-19th century. America was a nation undergoing rapid change. On one side, the winds of the Industrial Revolution were blowing. New railway lines were being laid. The sounds of machines echoed through the cities. Factories and industries were being established. On the other side, in the rural and agricultural states, cotton and tobacco plantations were sustaining the economies of both America and Europe. But the hands that toiled in these fields were mostly enslaved people, African slaves brought across the ocean, who for centuries had been the backbone of the South's economy. Slavery in America was nothing new. Since the 17th century, European traders had been cramming Africans into ships and bringing them to America. They were sold in markets, bought by landowners, and forced to labor in the fields. Slaves were not regarded as human beings, but as property. Their lives, freedom, and rights all depended on the mercy of their owners. They had no legal protection. Marriages were torn apart, children separated, and even the smallest mistake could result in brutal punishment. In the northern states, slavery gradually declined over time because industrial development was stronger there. Factories and workshops relied on wage labor, not slaves. But in the southern states, agriculture was impossible without slavery. Massive plantations thrived on the sweat and blood of enslaved people who grew cotton, rice, and tobacco. This created a deep divide between the North and South on the issue of slavery. The northern states opposed slavery. People there believed it was an inhumane system that had no place in a modern nation. Northern politicians pushed for legislation to stop its spread. The South, on the other hand, defended slavery as its economic and social right. They claimed that without slavery, their agriculture and economy would collapse. This growing conflict eventually turned into political, social, and finally military confrontation. At such a time, a man emerged whose name was Abraham Lincoln. Born in 1809 in a poor family in Kentucky, he attended school only for a few years. Most of his education came from reading books on his own. He earned his living by chopping wood and doing small jobs, but he never abandoned his love of learning. Later, he studied law and became a successful lawyer. His simplicity, honesty, and hard work won people's admiration. When he entered politics, he stood out for his integrity and clear stance. Lincoln's most important principle was that slavery was morally wrong. He knew it was a complex issue, and that the South could not simply be stripped of slavery overnight, but he was determined to prevent its spread. He ran for president as the Republican Party's candidate, and his central policy was to stop slavery from expanding into new territories. As soon as he was elected president, panic spread through the South. They believed Lincoln would destroy their economic and social system. In response, 11 Southern states seceded and formed their own government, calling it the Confederate States of America. In 1861, the conflict escalated into open war. This war became the bloodiest civil war in American history. The Northern States, Union, fought to preserve the nation and end slavery, while the Southern States, Confederacy, fought to defend their rights, meaning the preservation of slavery. The war raged for 4 years. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were killed, and countless more were wounded. Battles like Gettysburg, Antietam, and Shiloh were etched into history. The North had more industry, greater military resources, and better transportation, but the South had experienced generals and fierce determination. The war was brutal and devastating. In 1863, Lincoln took a historic step. He issued the Emancipation Proclamation. According to this declaration, all slaves in the rebellious southern states were to be freed. Although it did not immediately free every enslaved person, since the South was still in rebellion, it gave the war a new purpose. It was no longer just a battle to preserve the Union, but a war for freedom. After this proclamation, thousands of enslaved people joined the Union Army and began fighting for their own liberation. This move also had an international impact. European nations, especially Britain and France, which had considered supporting the Confederacy, could no longer justify aiding a cause built on defending slavery. Lincoln's action not only gave hope to the enslaved, but also strengthened the Union politically. By 1865, Union forces had gained decisive victories. In April, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant. The Civil War was over, the Union was preserved, and slavery's end was inevitable. That same year, the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, permanently abolishing slavery. Millions of enslaved people were formally declared free. Tragically, Abraham Lincoln did not live long to see the fruits of his victory. On April 14, 1865, just days after the war's end, he was assassinated in a Washington theater by John Wilkes Booth, a fervent supporter of slavery. Lincoln died the next day. The entire nation mourned. After Lincoln, America entered a new era known as the Reconstruction era. During this time, efforts were made to grant rights to freed slaves and to provide them with education and job opportunities. But prejudice in the South did not vanish. Though African Americans were legally free, they continued to face racism, poverty, and discrimination. The abolition of slavery in America had global repercussions. It inspired anti-slavery movements in Europe and other regions. This event became a milestone in human history. A nation had fought a war, sacrificing hundreds of thousands of lives for the freedom of oppressed people.